Tonight, slavery transforms America into an economic power.
And that made slaves the most valuable thing in the nation beside the land itself.
Enslaved men, women, and children labor to make millions for their masters.
Here you have the nation tolerating the selling of human beings.
The seeds of destruction have been planted.
Violence is erupting in the halls of government, on the streets of Washington.
It was the age of cotton, a time when a third of all Southerners lived in bondage, an era of extraordinary wealth sustained by unimaginable brutality. Millions of enslaved people were bought and sold. In the Cotton Kingdom, it seemed slavery would last forever.
200, who'll do that?
I once saw two beautiful children playing together. One was a fair white child, the other was her slave. When I saw them embracing each other, I turned sadly from the lovely sight. I foresaw the blight that would fall on the slave's heart.
In the 1850s, Harriet Jacobs began to pen an autobiography she would call Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. She would become the first woman to write a slave narrative. Published works written by African Americans who had escaped lives of bondage. At a time when state laws in the South made it a crime to teach the enslaved reading and writing, Harriet would use her words to reveal the awful truth of American slavery. Her story begins in the coastal town of Edenton, North Carolina, where she was born in 1813. Harriet's first owner had ignored the law and taught her to read and write. After she died, Harriet was willed to the 3-year-old daughter of Dr. James Norcom. 12 years old, with light skin and dark eyes, Harriet became a house slave. She was to cook and clean and serve the wishes of the mistress and the master.
Even the little child will learn that if God has bestowed beauty upon her, it will prove her greatest curse.
Harriet Jacobs calls slavery a cage of obscene birds. Harriet says that no matter what the slave girl looks like, if she's dark, if she's light, if she's medium, if she's at all attractive, if she has beauty, it's a curse, because the master will be after her.
Dr. Norcom was a man widely admired in the community. He took an unmistakable interest in his new house slave, a girl 40 years his junior.
The scent of sex and of oppression was overpowering in that household. It was just everywhere. And then Norcom starts to focus on her. And she doesn't know what to do. She's 12. She doesn't know how to handle it. She doesn't want anything to do with him. He's a disgusting old man. It's a very difficult situation for her. He is just after her all the time. She could be washing the dishes. She could be making up the beds. She could be setting the parlor straight. And whenever he's in a room with her, which is a lot, he's just after her.
My master began to whisper foul words in my ear. He peopled my young mind with unclean images, such as only a vile monster could think of. He met me at every turn, reminding me that I belonged to him, and swearing by heaven and earth that he would compel me to submit to him.
She's just completely drowning in this harassment and in this sexual situation. He doesn't want to force her. He wants to convince her. He wants to control her. He wants to control her mind. She says, "My master had money and power on his side. I had a determined will. There is might in each." Wonderful line. So she's in a war. And really from the time she's 12, 13, 14, she understands it because she isn't his victim. She's his enemy.
Harriet knew that the doctor was the father of 11 slave children.
Norcom had many children outside of his legal marriage. And what Harriet tells us that he tended to sell the children off.
The practice was not unusual. Mulattoes, wrote a slaveholder's wife, are as common as blackberries.
The rates of interracial children being born may have actually been higher then than any time since. Most of these liaisons cannot be described as consensual because any kind of liaison between a slave and their owner cannot be described as consensual.
So no white man ever had to feel like he was in fact raping a black woman if he took her against her will. In fact, if you look through the court records, you will find that the judges often say there is no such thing as the rape of a black woman. The courts do not recognize it.
This is just, it's disgusting. It's obscene, is what it is. It's obscene, it's perverted, it's incestuous. But it was normal. It was legal.
The Southern Code of Honor, Harriet learned, did little to protect the virtue of black women.
If a pastor has offspring by a woman not his wife, the church dismisses him. But if she's colored, it does not hinder his continuing to be their good shepherd. When Dr. Norcom joined the Episcopal Church, I was much surprised. I supposed that religion had a purifying effect on the character of men. But the worst persecutions I endured from him were after he was a communicant.
If Harriet had hoped that Mary Norcom would offer protection from her husband's advances, she was sadly disappointed.
Maria Norcom, as her husband called her, didn't have a lot of options. She married him when she was 16. She was pregnant, I think, every year and a half after that, forever. And she was expected to have those children and raise those children and run the household.
For Norcom's wife, Harriet's presence was a source of unrelenting misery.
What's particularly shocking, astonishing, is the figure reappearing in ex-slave narratives of the jealous mistress. The mistress who cannot protect herself from her husband's adultery and who makes her own life a torture because of jealousy and because of a sense that she is not able to lift herself above her husband's lust.
Meanwhile, Dr. Norcom pursues Harriet over years and years despite his wife, or maybe even to spite his wife, because they seem to be stuck in this triangle where everyone is, they're tormenting Harriet and tormenting each other at the same time.
At 15, Harriet believed she had finally found her rescuer, Samuel Treadwell Sawyer. The 30-year-old lawyer was from one of North Carolina's most important families.
He says that he's concerned about her. How does she feel? Imagine you're 15 years old and a charming young man, I mean, he's not so young, he's twice as old as she is actually, he's almost 30, comes and expresses concern. I am your friend, he says. You know where that goes. You know where that goes if you're 15 and you're white or black or brown or yellow or red and you feel you're in trouble. He was the safe haven. What was Harriet thinking when she agreed to take on a white lover? She's a teenager.